This call is being recorded.
Welcome to Ask When, everyone. Today with me I have Dave, and Dave is completely legally blind, and I'm going to let Dave share his story. We'll be talking about accessibility, and so I'm going to let Dave take it away and start sharing his story.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. My name is Dave Bahr. I own a company called In-Sightful Living. I just liked having the hyphen there. Thanks, Wynn, for having me on. I am, as Wynn said, totally blind. From birth, I was born 3 months premature with a fraternal twin who is sighted, and I grew up in Colorado, in just southeast of Denver, went to regular mainstream schools, meaning elementary, middle school, and high school. I was just like every other kid, except I couldn't see. Was the only blind student in my school. There were a couple of people I think that had low vision or some vision, but I've never had any. So my left retina was detached when I was born, and my right retina, somehow, I guess the fibers somehow got mixed up in the growing process. So after we were out of the hospital, they tried to do a surgery on my right eye when I was about 6 months old, and it destroyed the eye. So that eye is plastic, not made of glass. They haven't made those for a while. And we're here to talk about accessibility, first of all. But I grew up, I'm 34, so I grew up in a time of changing technology. After high school, I went to the University of Denver for 2 years, and then I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder. And in 2011, while working on my master's in musicology, I met the woman who would become my wife. Her name was Priscilla. She was in a wheelchair and had brittle bones. She was 34 inches tall, which was the only thing small about her was her stature. She was a force to be reckoned with, and we started dating in 2011. We're married in 2014, bought a home, and unfortunately she passed away of a brain aneurysm in 2017. Her health was failing pretty quickly, and things just took a turn for the worse, and that was that. I graduated in 2013 with a master's in musicology, and in 2018, after Priscilla's death, 2017, I started writing a book that I published in 2019 called Prave, which is P as in Priscilla, R-A-V-E, so it's Priscilla and Dave, The Adventures of the Blind and the Brittle. And it's a story about Priscilla and myself and our paths towards disability advocacy and independence. And I self-published it, and I also just in December, put out an audio version of it, which was a very interesting experience that became a performance. It was a lot of fun to do. It was exhausting, but it was a performance. And I loved it, and I'm very glad that I did it. So I put Prave out, and I've also been working as a coach. I've got a program called Stop, Look, and Listen, which is a 3-month coaching program that can deal with disability advocacy but doesn't have to. And I also work as an accessibility consultant. So what I mean by that is that I use what's called a screen reader. My computer and my phone talk to me very, very fast. Think your Amazon Echo or your Apple device talking to you saying, "Hello, Wynn, how are you?" but about 300 miles an hour. I listen to speech on the order of maybe 300 words a minute or so. And there are people who listen to speech faster than I do and slower than I do, and it's just something you get used to. And that's how I operate the internet and social media and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really do like Instagram, for example, because it's all photos, although you can have captions and things like that. And one of the big things we're here to talk about is about accessibility of technology which of course you know all about from, like guessing a chair perspective and CP perspective. But, here we're talking about how to make things accessible for the blind, but also if you make something accessible for the blind, it also helps other people who might have an invisible disability, because it allows things to be read more clearly by a screen reader, but also uses what's called universal design principles, which were developed originally for architecture, but now I don't know all of the ins and outs, but have been sort of adapted to make things accessible. And really what it comes down to with accessibility is that if you make something more accessible and usable, your market share increases. So you make more money, because I think it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people have a disability in the United States. So really it's a 20 or 25% market share increase if you make something accessible and usable to people with disabilities. So that's the very, very short version of my, although I never tell short stories.
The last stat I read, and this is because I was doing research for it, is it's 1 in 5 Americans have a disability. Now, I don't know about that worldwide, but when it comes, and David, you're going to get me on a wall here, and when it comes to accessibility, I love it when we go and punch the handicapped accessible door. You guys know the silver button that I'm talking about with the blue universal wheelchair symbol on it. And the handicapped accessible door does not work. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves. So when it comes to doing all that, what do you think buildings and companies should do to make handicapped accessibility more prevalent?
It's all about awareness. It's about talking about the uncomfortable. It's about talking about what is feared. Okay, what we're dealing with for accessibility is a base fear of the unknown. And what things like, and this is all my opinion, what things like political correctness mask in general are fears of the unknown and fears of being wrong or failing. And when you approach someone such as yourself or myself with a disability and say something like, I don't want to offend you, but automatically, at least with me, when you say that, you put me on the defensive, because I have to say, okay, you're probably not going to, because chances are I've heard it all before. And really what it comes down to is acknowledging the vulnerability that comes with dealing with somebody with a disability. You and I deal in vulnerability all the time because we have to. We deal in dependence all the time. Not independence, one word, but independence. Because you and I will always, for some, whatever it might be, small thing, big thing, are dependent on another individual who has whatever ability that you and I lack. I'm not saying that you can't be independent, but I think that needs to be acknowledged. So what it really comes down to is the prevalency is awareness. So my program is called Stop, Look, and Listen for that very reason. When you see somebody such as myself or yourself walking down the street, in my case, I have a cane. I used to have a dog, but I have a cane. And if you stop, maybe not physically stop, but mentally stop, and see me coming down the street, your reaction might be, okay, now what do I do? Or maybe you don't do anything. But if you stop, you look at me, look at my face or my carriage, how I'm walking, and then listen to the external voices, external things like cars, or if I'm approaching something, a pole or something, maybe my cane will find it, and the internal of your own panic. There's a lot of people that, and you know this, where they see somebody with a disability and they freak out because they don't know what to do. So they panic because they think that somehow you are going to be in harm's way, and you might be. You very well could miss something. Maybe there's a curb that you're about to step off, or a manhole cover, or something your cane misses, or whatever, or your chair misses. But there's a lot of overreaction, and a lot of that has to do with a fear of the unknown, the fear of being wrong. So that's kind of a vague sort of philosophical answer to your question, but that's
Yes,
kind of
but people need to wake up and smell the roses. And to be honest with you, people need to quit Googling, and she'll admit this too. Even my stepmom Googled what is CP. I will never forgive her for that one as long as I live, because people automatically assume that, number one, we're dumber than a box of rocks. Number two, people can't sit down with people and have an intelligent conversation with them.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get that. I think the Googling thing, and I don't know your specific situation, but I think if you were to, it's one thing to be educated and teach yourself about it. It's another to Google it, glance at it, and go, oh, interesting, and not do anything with it.
I think I think my stepmom Googled, glanced, and then delve Googled, glanced, and then had to delve right into it in 2019, and because my father passed away. But I'm like, okay, you can Google people, but you can't Google and not do anything. You can't take you can Google, but you can't. You need to now take it to the next level.
Right.
And so, what is the biggest misconception, that the biggest stigma that you want to break today, sitting on this podcast, about people that are legally blind?
The biggest, I think, it sounds so simple, but I get a lot of people that come up to me and they talk very loudly and very slowly because they think that I'm deaf as well as blind. Yeah. Or it's not that. That happens a lot. I don't know why. I've never figured out, but a lot of blind friends I have this problem. That because, and well, I do know why. We can't make eye contact in my case. My left eye wanders. It doesn't move around as much as it used to, but it does wander. I can't control where it goes. The right eye, because it's a prosthetic, faces forward. And so I look at people when I'm talking to them. So that helps. But somehow it's unnerving because we're such a visually based society, that people somehow think that because I can't see, I can't hear. I've had people ask if I knew sign language. Or I had a Brailleist that I knew who wrote stuff for me in Braille in elementary school, and she was asked all the time, "Oh, you work with blind people, you know sign language?" Really? It's a question of critical thinking. So I mean, it sounds so simple, but the other one I get is when people come up and I'm with somebody who is sighted. This happened with my wife and I all the time, and she was in a chair. People will be like, "What would you like to order?" And I usually would just speak up and say, well, I'd like, whatever, a sandwich.
Yeah.
But there have been a couple of times where I got really annoyed at somebody and said, well, he's not really sure. He'll have to talk to his wife and let you know. And that really depends on tone of voice, too. I think that's another thing, too, that and you get this too, is don't talk down to me because I can't see. Don't talk down to me because of my disability. And
Well, that's interesting because I, because of you saying I can't make eye contact, well, I have two stigmatisms due to cerebral palsy. One, the one worse than the other one. So when I look at people,
right.
and I've been knowing to do this, and people have been knowing. I'm laughing because I've been knowing to literally jump out of vehicles, out of SUVs, and somehow land on my feet. But because of my stigmatisms, I it looks like I can't make eye contact.
Right.
And it's interesting that just dawned on me today as when we're recording this, because because I've had, and this was many, 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 many years ago, I had a person say, "Win, look at me." And I could not figure out why in the world this person said, "Win, look at me." And because she thought that I wasn't making eye contact.
Interesting.
Because of my eyes wandering and because of my eyes not focusing on them. And
Yeah.
that fascinated me for years now, why people think that we as a disabled society can't make eye contact. And now that you say I can't make eye contact, number one, because I'm legally blind, and number two, because I have a prosthetic, that makes complete sense to me.
What's interesting is that sometimes I'll get, not often, but sometimes I'll get people that say, "You have some vision, right?" Because, to quote my wife, Priscilla used to say, "You don't look blind." Meaning that, like, there are some, and I'm stereotyping here, so forgive me, but to make my point, there are some people who look down quite a bit who are blind. There are some people that move their head around quite a bit. The Ray Charles kind of shuffle. The movements of some blind people, not all, some. But I bring that up because I've had other people that have said, "Oh, you've got some vision, right? Can you see what color that is?" No, I can't. And it's a fair question. I don't get mad if someone says, "Hey, you've got some vision, right?" No, I don't. But part of that is because the right eye focuses forward, but the left eye doesn't as much. And I think, like I said, I could be wrong, but I think the left eye's gotten a little bit better. But still, I get people that don't quite understand that I can't make eye contact. And it's not something that's going to like ruin my life or anything like that, but it is interesting to me that and face recognition, which obviously there's that stereotype of, oh, blind people feel other people's faces. No, we don't. Don't really care what your face looks like, and that's a little strange to me. But yeah. I know why people have that stereotype. It's because visually we're a facially based society, and people focus on faces. I focus on voices. It's the same sort of thing. So yeah.
And now so your is, and correct me if I'm wrong, now I'm stereotyping the blind here.
Okay, the stereotypical podcast.
The stereotypical podcast, great, which I shouldn't be doing. But is your sense of hearing heightened because you can't see? I've been told for many, many years now that a person, when they lose one sense, the they heighten another sense.
I would say yes. In general, there are certain things that I hear better than others, just like any human being. I don't know. People are like, "Wow, you must have super hearing," and I'm like, "Sometimes, but sometimes I don't." I mean, I'm just as human as the next. But I would say that it's more attuned to different things. It's more situational. It's more like I've been forced to listen more than others, which is why I do what I do as a coach and why my program is called what it is. Because I think, and this is probably, word semantics, but I think people hear, but they don't listen a lot. I think you can hear someone's voice, but then listening to their voice is different. I would argue that listening is deeper than hearing in a philosophical and a physical sense. That's my opinion.
Listening to them and actually having a conversation with them is actually something that doesn't come about nowadays, except for when the whole country was in lockdown and we were stuck as a society at home and with our significant others, plus our kids. We've learned how to cherish the time we have with our loved ones.
Yeah. So I think in general, yes. I think it's more attuned. It has to be more focused. When somebody who's sighted stands at a street corner, they're not going to listen to the traffic patterns of the cars going by, but I have to, because that's how I know how to cross the street. That's how I came up with my stop, look, and listen program. Actually, the title was going up through a street light and being like, what actually happens here? Well, you're going to see if the light turns, but I'm going to listen to the patterns, and that's how I've been trained, ever since I was a little kid. So I would say the short answer is yes.
And so you did, to write your book, you did use speech dictation.
Yeah.
And
Mainly, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say mainly it's faster. So I used Dragon Naturally Speaking for, 2/3 of my book. I typed out some of it because some of it just came to me and I typed it out. But I used Dragon with what's called a Braille display. So it's kind of like a blind person's monitor. It's a machine that sits in front of me. And the Braille pops up under my fingers when I dictate. And so I can go back and review. And I've been using that system for about 15 years, ever since I started college. And it does make things a lot faster. And of course, dictation's gotten better and better as it's moved along. So yeah, I would say 2/3 of it was dictated, and then of course I had editors and proofreaders and stuff like that, and still found mistakes when I ended up recording it. But that's how it goes.
Well, that's how it goes. And so you teach people about assistive technology as your day job.
Yeah.
And what is the most enjoyable part of it and the most frustrating part of teaching people about assistive technology?
The most enjoyable part of it is being able to show people that I can navigate the internet, that I can go through a website, that I can purchase a product. Conversely, the most frustrating part is that I can't always do those sorts of things, that I need that help, that I need a sighted assistance of some sort to fill out a form or a CAPTCHA or something on a site, or that pop-up ads keep coming up that my screen reader keeps jumping to because it doesn't know what else to do. So it's kind of accessibility is sort of I don't want to say double-edged sword, but a double-edged sword, because there's that, hey, look, there's so much technology and there's been so much advancement with technology, and yet you can have sometimes the most accessible website that conforms to these what are called web content accessibility guidelines, and yet there are little tiny things like landmarks or little widgets that keep popping up. Sometimes that screen readers go, huh? And so it might be accessible, but is it usable? And there's a difference, kind of between the two. So it's, I love being able to show somebody, hey, I can navigate your website. Let me purchase your product. But, like I said, the opposite is I can't do anything. Let me get some sighted help. So I'd say that's
Well, I am going to plug an app here, and it's not mine, but a friend of mine recommended it to me many, many, many years ago now, and it's called Be My Eyes. Be My
yes.
Eyes.
I actually use a very similar app called Ira, which is AIRA. It's the paid version of Be My Eyes, basically.
Be My Eyes and Iowa are a volunteer system. I don't know about Iowa, but I know about Be My Eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
Be My Eyes is a volunteer system where a blind person could say, "Look, I'm looking for help. Could you help me?" And it will ping me as a volunteer, as a sighted
Yep.
person, and say, "This person needs help. Do you want to help them?"
Yeah, it's great. I use Ira all the time. I pay for it, and I love it. I always kind of tell people that I got Ira at the best of time and the worst of time. The worst of time, of course, is I just lost my wife. But all of a sudden, I kept seeing things online about this. What the screen reader kept pronouncing is "era," and I'm like, "What in the world?" And I clicked on it, and I watched the video, and I kind of started tearing up because here was this ability to get sighted assistance because I knew it was just going to be, I didn't have Priscilla anymore. But I also knew that I could have a pair of eyes when I needed. And so, yeah, I've paid for Ira for, 3.5 years now. And I use it on a daily basis, even if it's just to call and say, hey, what color is this? Or what does my computer say? Or can you help me fill out a form? So, yeah, if there are people out there that are interested in either of those and they want to help, Be My Eyes is volunteer. Ira is trained and, it is a paid position. I think they're both great. They both have, they're both very useful. They're both very helpful if you're attentive. Just like any other app with customer service, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But 99.9% of the time, I've had great experiences with Ira. So yeah.
Yeah, because there are apps that could help the people who are blind, and I am curious to talk about a Braille machine. You mentioned a Braille machine quickly as I said you wrote your book. And so
Mm-hmm.
is and now correct me if I'm wrong here, Dave, but is that a machine that sits in front of your computer, or is that a machine that comes with the computer, or is it a external machine that sits in front of your computer enough so that Braille, if you know Braille, obviously, so that Braille can come up underneath your fingers and you can figure it out?
Yep, you got it right. Yeah, so it sits in front of my machine. It's a separate machine. I have several actually.
Okay.
I have a couple. I've got some that I have a small one that I can bring and use with my phone. I've got one I can, and I have a couple that I use for that I can use for my computer. But yeah, it's a separate thing, and it just pops up just like you would have a monitor or a separate monitor or something like that.
So
And
just you would have a separate monitor, and so it just pops up, and as I said, Assistive. I've been using Assistive technology for eons now. Assistive technology has gotten better. It is a devil's advocate here. It's good, but it's not so good. And David will attest to that. And I hate technology. I survive. I hate technology. And because I can navigate the internet, but I hate technology just because technology doesn't do what I ask it half the time. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's great. I like a good human conversation. Yes, back in the old days, we were allowed to. In the old days, I'm talking about last year in March, before March, we were allowed to have human conversations. Now it has to be done via technology, aka Zoom. And I'm like, I just want people in the room to assist. I just want people in the room to assist.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's
And
been, but
how has the pandemic affected the blind community? I know it's affected all of us, including me, in all sorts of different ways. But how has the pandemic affected the blind community?
so I, first of all, I can't speak for the whole community. I can speak for myself. Um, I generally am kind of a loner, if you will. I don't really have a problem being by myself. I would love other people and company and things like that. So I think that's part of it. I really haven't been out that much enough to be like, well, for other people of the blind community, but it's affected it in good and bad ways. I think the idea of social distancing, I had to kind of laugh because I'm like, well, nobody pays attention to the little things on the floor that say every 6 feet anyway at a store,
No,
from what I've been told.
no, they don't.
So whatever. But for me personally, it has not affected me too terribly in that generally am by myself and I can get things. I will say it sucks not to be able to go out just when I want to get a lift or something, or go see friends, or go to a bar or something like that. So, I mean, in that respect, it's kind of been like everybody else. But in a good way, if you will, it's allowed me to get things delivered when I need it, have friends help get scripts and groceries and things like that. So I mean, technology in that respect has been helpful. But I guess for me, it's been, I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough. It's been lonely. I would love to go meet people, go on dates, go things like that. But it's not gonna happen right now, and I'm okay with that. I sort of have come to some terms with that, where I put on a mask and I go out if I need to, but I try not to, just because right now we're living in a time where we don't know a lot. And so, I mean, I can't say, I don't want to say for the blind community, because maybe other people have had far different experiences. And that said, maybe I sound privileged and spoiled, and I'm lucky. I'm lucky to live where I do and get the help that I have, and I don't take that for granted at all. I'd like to point that out, that I'm not just sort of sitting there going, "Wow, I'm blind, but everything's great and peachy." No, it's not easy for anybody. But in some ways, where I do live is pretty central to getting food, getting things delivered. Thank God for IRA. But yeah, I think the personal connection, the lack of physical affection, all of that is a big one as well. But I think we can all get through it. I think there are ways to get through it if people want to listen. So maybe
We
that's not quite the answer you were expecting, but
we are all gonna get through it, but it's as tough on the disabled community as it is on the rest of us. And I, fortunately, I have the means to be moving physically here in the next couple months. And I will be moving to a big city. And so, yes, stick amount goal in the city of Phoenix, Arizona. And I will have those entities of a city life. And so I'm super excited about that. But where I live, there's terrible, for my case, there's terrible medical care. And there, I just got a call today as we're recording this, and they go, "Do you want to drive 2 hours away to pick up a machine that you're going to need?" And I'm like, no, I would rather have a person come into my house with a mask on, and then deliver it and set it up for me, and I'll have a mask on. But I think what David and I are trying to say is it's equally as tough as as for the able-bodied community. Just as you add a disability on top of it, it's equally as tough. And so, yeah. And David, where can people find you if they choose to do so? And where could people get a hold of your book if they want to read that?
So they can find me at in-sightful, SIGHTFUL, living.com. And the book is called Brave, that's Priscilla and Dave, and Proud and Brave. So Brave, The Adventures of the Blind and the Brittle. And it is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback, and now in audio as well. I am at Dave at in-sightfulliving.com, and you can also find me on LinkedIn if you search Dave Bahr. I'm also on Facebook, Dave Bahr, B-A-H-R.
Well, I do follow you on Facebook, and the adventures of you has always fascinated me. And so, as far as finding Dave's book on Amazon, please go support it. Please, if you do buy it, leave a review that will help the algorithms of Amazon pick it up, so more people will see it. And if you guys are also looking for my book is all over the place on Amazon. I Become a Win, so that's good, and we'll see what you guys think. And as I said, please leave a review for Dave's book, and then we'll catch you guys next time, and I will catch you guys next time. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks to you guys. Bye, you guys.
Thanks.